So this was supposed to be just like a normal Am I the Antagonist video, but I ended up getting so annoyed or perplexed with this specific redditor and his post that I just talked about it for 10 minutes. So let me know what you think. It's kind of interesting. Also, I forgot to bring headphones that plug into my laptop, so I'm just listening through the terrible laptop speakers, and I'm pretty sure that my setting was wrong on my interface for this entire video, so just bear with the shitty everything. Alright, I actually feel kind of bad about this one, but AITA for saying that abruptly ending an interesting conversation without any explanation is rude and inconsiderate. So the other day I went roller skating, with my family. We'd skate along the straight road to the next town over, 20 kilometers away, and at the beginning of the journey I struck up a conversation with my dad. That conversation lasted the entire duration of the journey, around an hour and a half, and it was clear that we were both enjoying it. I had put a lot of thought into it and had formulated a number of ideas that I was eager to discuss with my dad. However, at some point I said something that he didn't agree with, and he immediately ended the conversation right there and then. I asked for a reason, but he declined, saying that it was his right to end the conversation without having to give a reason. I said that he didn't, at least not without being rude and inconsiderate, because by that point, I had already invested a lot of time, thought, and emotion into the conversation, so it was no longer his own private matter. By ending it, he'd essentially been throwing all of the thought that went into formulating the ideas that I wanted to share with him down the rubbish bin. The absolute least that he could do, in my view, was to give me a short explanation of his decision to end the conversation, but when I'm in his place, I always make an effort to give the other party a few more chances to keep the conversation going, and am empathetic to end a conversation when I sense the other person is excited or passionate about it. Moreover, not even providing the other person with an explanation can result in very silly instances, which the problem can be easily addressed by the other person, but because it is never shared with them, both parties have to settle for a suboptimal outcome, ending a conversation that both parties were enjoying. I actually believe this was one of those cases. Anyway, to his end, after he said he wasn't going to talk about it anymore, I spent around a minute proposing compromises to keep the conversation going, or for him to give me an explanation as to his reason for ending it. However, at that point, he snapped, lashing out at me, saying that I was being annoying, and since then, he wouldn't talk to me normally for the rest of the trip, which lasted a further few hours as we strolled around the town. After the fact, he said that he was 100% confident that he was completely in the right and I was completely in the wrong. My mom agreed with him. Both my mom and dad still blame me for ruining that day for everyone. Did I, or was my dad actually rude to end a conversation that we were both enjoying without even offering me an explanation as to why? So we kind of need to get into some of the replies from the OP on this one to get a better sense of what the fuck is going on here, because this whole story is like very opaque. Like there's not a description of what the conversation was about, which would have been very helpful. Also, I'm not sure if it was just him and his dad skating at a time, or if him and his dad were having an hour-and-a-half conversation about something deep while there were like multiple other family members just kind of sitting by the wayside. I'm not sure if they're participating or not, but let's get into the replies so we can get a better idea of what's going on. So a Reddit user quotes him saying, "I asked for a reason, but he declined, saying that it was his right to end the conversation without having to give a reason," and says, "He is correct. You don't mention the twist that ended the conversation. Care to elaborate?" OP responds, "There was no twist there. I said something relevant to the conversation, and he immediately replied with a rather angry, 'You're dead wrong, I'm 100% right, but if you're pretending to not understand why, then you aren't listening to me.' That's actually something he says pretty much every time I don't agree with him on something. Obviously, I was carefully listening to him the entire time, and I genuinely didn't understand his line of reasoning." Then this commenter replies, "Okay, what I'm getting is that I believe the conversation was about religion or politics. It's a bit rude to end a conversation without explanation. It's very rude to disregard someone's wishes and demand an explanation." Then the OP responds, "It wasn't. It was a conversation about how much analyzing human behavior through the lens of human brains being neural networks can reveal about our intentions and intrinsic goals. My dad constantly gets angry every time I say something he doesn't agree with, even if I don't know that he doesn't agree with it, and even if the topic is impersonal. But usually he gives me a second chance to take back what I said, not in this case." So like, this is what's so confusing to me, and there are more replies. We may or may not not get into it, but I just want to stop it right here. This is like such a meta-narrative conversation. Like, you're having a conversation about analyzing human behavior through the lens of human brains being neural networks and how much that can reveal about our intentions and intrinsic goals. Like, this is so deep in the sauce, and I honestly kind of feel bad for anybody else who had to, like, be on the sidelines of this conversation, unless they're also, like, deeply intellectual and interested in this topic. I do not get what's going on here. But there's something about the situation that just isn't adding up to me. Like, as far as the topic itself, I guess I want to believe that human brains are, like, deeper than just being able to be explained. Like, all of our intentions and intrinsic goals and love and all of that stuff being explained purely through neural networks. But I guess if there was some sort of tool sophisticated enough to actually map it all out and analyze it, maybe you could explain everything. But I don't even know if that's what the conversation was about. And how does this boil over into, like, this I'm right and you're wrong type thing? Like, I get the impression that this person and their dad are actually, like, very similar people and just both have, like, very concrete ideas, and those just mismatched at some point. But if that's the case, then why couldn't the dad just, like, explain why he wanted to end the conversation? Like, either I'm annoyed, I don't want to talk about this anymore. That would have been my explanation. Please stop annoying me with this topic. But maybe he just didn't feel that way. But then why can't he explain? But maybe he didn't explain because he knew that the son was going to try to come up with some explanation or, like, some way to rope him back into the discussion, and he just didn't want to deal with that. I'm not sure. I am just going to read one more set of replies between these two people, but I just want to say right off the bat, I think it's always going to be very difficult to find people that are actually interested in engaging on topics like this for a very long time. Like, this is clearly your thing, and that's totally cool, but you would need to find someone where this is, like, equally their thing, where they are deeply, deeply into a topic like this to go on for longer than an hour and a half about it. But anyway, the replier says, he may have reached a conclusion that he really didn't like, which shook his worldview. People for the most part don't like that. As this is something he does regularly, it is likely best not to become stuck on it. And OP replies to the idea of this he may have reached a conclusion that he didn't like, which shook his worldview. He says, I think a similar thing happened, which is that he was on the brink of reaching such a conclusion, so he put up his defenses and said, no, I'm 100% right, so there's no point in discussing this further. He used to be open to receiving information that might shake up his worldview, but ever since I disillusioned him on free will, his new strategy has been, I know I'm completely right, and you're just not mature enough to understand yet, / aren't listening well enough if you're just not understanding me phrase, which is the exact same every single time, so it's easy to tell what's going on inside his head. But anyway, I completely understand all of that. That's why, were I given the chance, I would move away from this specific subtopic and just discuss the more general topic, which he was completely fine with. I know this would work because he literally always works whenever he gets angry due to my saying something he doesn't agree with. The problem was he just didn't tell me to do this that time and shut me down immediately when I tried to. I've learned my lesson, and now I'll definitely be more cautious when having long, engaging discussions with him, but I'm still not okay with how he handles them. I understand not being ready for worldview-shattering conclusions, and I understand having anger issues that are way too late to fix in his middle age, but I don't understand not giving the slightest appreciation for the hours that I've put into the conversation. Once again, I just feel like this whole thing is just way too opaque. Like, you need to explain more of what's going on in the conversation, and it seems like if this is a conversation which you have now put hours of, like, thought into formulating how it's going to go, and what you guys are going to talk about, and what the debate topics might be, and how you're going to respond to the things that he says, like, it's so deep in the sauce, you might as well not have come to Reddit for a conclusion to this, because if you can't explain what went wrong in the conversation and what discussion topics you're talking about, like, how do you expect anybody to be able to analyze what's going on? I don't even know why I am. I'm just, like, so deeply annoyed by the situation that I feel compelled for some weird reason to get into this. But yeah, this dude seems like he's rejecting free will, and he disillusioned his father on free will, which he may not have. Like, he seems like he does not think that free will exists, and that's something that he's tried to convince his dad of, and maybe his dad accepted that premise, or maybe his dad just placated him because he didn't want to fucking discuss discuss it anymore. But anyway, these are just like extremely deep topics, and like I said, this feels like something that you would discuss with like people in the same like thesis as you, or like whatever doctorate program. I don't know what the fuck this shit is. I'm not smart. I didn't finish college, you know, like. But yeah, this seems like a niche discussion that would be had among academics that have like concrete understandings of all the facets of what's going on here. Not something that, like, unless your dad is also really into this, which maybe he is, that you would discuss with him, but maybe just not on the fucking 5-hour roller skating trip. That's also weird. Like, you guys were roller skating for fucking ever. We need to get back to that. But anyway, this is weird. I don't think you're gonna have success with this often, talking about these sorts of topics, unless it's in an academic setting. Hey, this is end of the video Q because I completely forgot to come to a conclusion about the original question. Yeah, I do think somebody should give an explanation when they end a conversation. I think this specific conversation may have been so frustrated that he just shut down entirely and didn't want to give an explanation, but I think it would be more helpful to you if he just straight up explained the issues that he has with the types of discussions that you guys have and why he just doesn't want to talk about them anymore at the end. Like, he's the older person, he's more the adult. I do think the responsibility is on him to just explain to you, for your sake and for his sake, to have better conversations with you in the future, just why this annoyed him and why he doesn't want to talk like that anymore. So I'm gonna guess very few people made it to the end of this video, but anyway, a little life update. My band did release an EP. That's kind of beside the point. I started this channel in a bedroom at my parents' house, and now I'm coming back full circle to being in a bedroom at my parents' house is where I'm going to be recording my videos from now on. Right now I'm cat sitting for my buddy, so I pretty much like moved into my parents' house and then immediately like came here afterwards to pet sit my friend's cat 7, and it's a good time. I'm happy to be here, but everything kind of feels like out of whack right now. Nothing feels like normal in my life. Like, everything's gonna be fine. Like, I'm actually in a really good situation still, and everything's chill, but a little bit discombobulated. Sorry for the lack of videos. Everything's just been deeply chaotic. Like, I pretty much went from the EP release, the Dear Marianne EP release, if I wanted, immediately into like, oh, I can't afford to live in this place anymore. But like, you know, it is what it is. We're all out here, we're just chilling, and I hope everybody's doing super well, skating on to the best of your abilities and drinking a sufficient amount of water. I should have angled this earlier so I'm more in the center of frame, but anyway, later, skaters.